Well, it is official, guys. The Bitcoin spot ETFs have launched, and where things haven't quite been as you might have expected. In today's video, we're going to be talking just that. We're going to be taking a look at the charts. We're jumping into the world of Bitcoin, and I'll share my thoughts and opinions on what I think is going to happen next. Let's roll that intro. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. This time in the studio. We are not out in the woods doing a walk and talk video. I thought today it was slightly more important to actually reflect on what's been going on with the price action of Bitcoin, given the Bitcoin spot ETFs have launched. Now, there's a lot of interesting things that are happening out there that may or may not be aware of. And so there's a few things I think it's really important that we actually reflect on before we kind of dive into the technical analysis. The first thing we need to address, of course, is the Bitcoin spot ETFs and how they work. We know that the Bitcoin spot ETFs are actually only a representation of the shares or the interest in Bitcoin. It is not actually investing directly into BTC. The differences I will go through in a different video between, a futures ETF and, of course, a Bitcoin spot ETF. There are some differences there, but there's also some fundamental differences with maybe people's expectations on Bitcoin spot ETF versus the reality of what these ETFs actually mean and how they operate. So I'm going to take that offline from this video. We'll actually watch out for the channel tomorrow where I'll go through that in a little bit more detail. But in today's video, what I want to do is I want to show you what's happened so far with Bitcoin's price action in relation to the Bitcoin spot ETFs going live. So as you can kind of see here on the chart, we were monitoring this downward trend line. This downward trend line, of course, was tested a couple of times. We broke through it briefly here, and we did see Bitcoin's price actually come up to the $48,969 level here on the USDT paired with Bitcoin on the 1 hour time frame. And we are using Binance for our spot data here. Now, as you can kind of see, this move to the upside was met by some resistance, and we started to see these moves to the downside. Now, this also happens to coincide, of course, with everything that is going on with the Bitcoin spot ETFs, right? They launched at 9:30 a.m. over on New York, on the New York Stock Exchange. And that happened to be, I think, 3:30 or 2:30 here, UTC. And what we saw was this quick move to the upside, met by an immediate drop to the downside. Now, for a while on this channel, we have, of course, been speculating about the Sell the News event. This is an event where basically everyone knows that we have Bitcoin spot ETFs kind of lining up, and ultimately they just sell the news rather than thinking that it's going to go to the moon. Now, there are, of course, some intricacies when it comes to actually how these Bitcoin spot ETFs work, right? And ultimately what's going on here is that the Bitcoin spot ETFs hold the actual asset, in this case Bitcoin, and the investors on the New York Stock Exchange, for example, can go ahead and purchase and trade shares in the held Bitcoin. They are not actually directly buying BTC. And I'll go through that obviously in more detail in another video. But from our price chart here, you can see that this run to the upside was met by an immediate move to the downside. And still, this is actually held up quite well. I don't think the penny has quite dropped just yet. We're down 6.02% at the point of recording. I don't think this is going to slow down anytime soon. There might be some more FOMO that takes us back up towards that kind of $49,000 level. It's possible for sure. Ultimately here, what's going on is pretty much textbook for what we would expect to see. Now, we are back below our trend line here, but we are still, of course, looking at our lower trend lines as well. And this one has just been broken. Let me show you this in a little bit more detail just here. So what we have going on, let me go ahead and just grab this, right? We had a first test down here. Okay, this test coming in at 44,300. We then had a secondary test of this trend line happening right up here. Okay, and this one came in at the 44,800. You'll notice these are very accurate numbers. Then, of course, we had a third test on this trend line coming in just over here and this one comes in at 45,618. Now you can see we've just lost this as a potential support trend line. Even the same way that we had this break up to the upside, we also see that we are moving back to the downside, right? We've broken this trend line, and ultimately things here are not looking so strong. Now I would expect some intense volatility when it comes to BTC over the next few days as people start to work out exactly what is going on. We're already seeing articles out there in the mainstream media quoting close to $2 billion in trading volume in the first couple of hours of these Bitcoin spot ETFs being live. Yet that $2 billion hasn't actually presented itself in any form of decent price action. And you have to ask yourself why. It's quite clear when we actually think about this that ultimately a lot of people who were anticipating fantastic runs for Bitcoin on the back of these Bitcoin spot ETFs were not actually taking into consideration that ultimately everyone was buying in earlier. Retail investors who were FOMOing in, they aren't waiting for the approval. They aren't waiting for these products to go live for the Bitcoin spot ETFs to actually launch. And of course, we have to compound this down by the fact that these investors on the New York Stock Exchange, they're buying shares in the Bitcoin spot ETF. They're not buying Bitcoin. There's no spot money coming in, so there's not $2 billion flowing into BTC here. But obviously, we have seen some FOMO, and we are starting to see the sell the news event. It's a bit early. We are still seeing a bit more of a move to the downside at the point of recording this video, but I am still expecting this to kind of bleed out a lot more specifically, and as I said earlier, when that penny drops. So for BTC, I expect us to continue moving on down. I've been pretty vocal about this for quite a bit of time. It isn't unusual. Hopefully everyone is more than well aware and prepared for what is about to unfold because, like I've said many times before, and I'll say it again, this move to the downside for BTC and the crypto market is a fantastic opportunity to dollar cost average and build out your positions. This isn't something to be feared. This isn't something to be scared of. This is exactly what we do in this business. We trade and we ultimately look to build our portfolios and our positions. This is not a sell everything panic kind of moment. This is, if you are paying attention, using that dry powder that you have on the side, using those spare stable coins that you've been saving and taking advantage of the fear that is about to seep into the market. Ultimately, I think Bitcoin is a fantastic asset and I think it's got a very bright future. But ultimately, we do have to see a healthy correction in the market. And I think that's really what we're starting to see here. And as soon as that penny does drop, and we'll start to see retail investors start to realize that this really isn't going up to those all-time highs that retail investors were so dreaming about. But I do think that that is around the corner, and I do think that is something that we are likely to see in 2024. And if we can't get it in 2024, I imagine it'll be very early in 2025. So I want to kind of just put this out there on this video to kind of say that we've had a bit of a move to the upside, and we are starting to see a bit of a correction. Yes, there's been a couple of $1 billion flowing into the Bitcoin spot ETFs, but that hasn't been flowing into Bitcoin directly. Those investors are buying shares in the held Bitcoin by those spot ETFs. Now, that is to say that eventually those Bitcoin spot ETFs are going to be looking to bring more Bitcoin into them and they'll sell more shares, and there's going to be some demand that will come from that. But I think that's going to be a slightly longer term play. Ultimately, what we're looking for is we're going to be looking for a healthy correction, a big reset, and then fantastic run to the upside. I'm going to leave the video right there. If you're looking for a little bit more, why not check out this video right here where I go through some more of the interesting kind of analytics for BTC.